There's something profound about top teams that don't win titles. Something about it captures the minds of fans and experts alike. Jokes, memes, even tradition can be born out of strange patterns in the world. When it applies to the Rocket League esports community, we ask ourselves the same question after every event. How the f*** does Faze always finish fourth? Whether you're a new fan or a curious one, this video is going to arm you with all relevant data from the last 4 splits of the RLCS into how Faze have gotten the reputation of 4th place finishers. So strap in and let me tell you a story about the infamous 4th clan. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me spell it out. For clarity, a top 4 spot is considered finishing 3rd or 4th. Through 12 regionals and 5 LANs, Faze Clan have finished top 4 9 times. Laying out the data, Space Station has been creeping up on Faze. And you might be asking, Corelli, this isn't that compelling. Plenty of teams have multiple top 4 finishes. And to you, I'd say, I'm not done. Of the 5 LANs RLCS has had since 2021, Faze has finished top 4 in 4 of them. All but a singular LAN, Faze lost in a top 4. This blows other teams out of the water. The next closest is one top 4 finish by Space Station Gaming, Version 1, K-Corp, Semper, and the 2 SAM representatives of Furia and Team Secret. This trend is unprecedented, and it's a bit uncanny when you consider how consistent it is. It begs the question of if there's data that could predict this, or even better, what does the data say about Faze when they're in these scenarios? For that, we have to start at square one, domestically. At the domestic level, Faze is no joke. At a glance, the only team that has had more domestic titles is G2. The pure dominance of Faze is really highlighted when you look at their record against non-major qualifying teams. Essentially, these are the domestic teams finishing 6th and below for any given split. Through the 4 splits, Faze is boasting an 86% series win rate with a 72% game win rate against non-major qualifying teams. And while Faze isn't statistically the best in these categories, they are one of only 2 teams in North America to qualify for all international majors since 2021. Bottom line, Faze has only lost 5 series in 4 splits against non-major qualifying teams. So yeah, Faze cranked 90s on kids who aren't top 5 material. But this really shouldn't be a shock to anyone. The real question is, what happens to Faze when they go up against the big boys, the major qualifying teams? To put it bluntly, Faze have a 48% series win rate against major qualifying teams, with a 47% game win rate in 186 games. They went 17-18 in series over 4 splits. So how does that fare against some of the top teams in North America? First off, Faze isn't close to being first in either series win percentage or game win percentage. NRG's earlier splits helped them edge out G2 for now, sitting at 54% series win percentage. What's interesting is despite Space Station having the lowest series win rate against major qualifying teams, they have the same game win percentage as Faze at 47%. Additionally, teams that at one point we would have considered, quote, dominant teams like G2 or NRG both have a healthy few points above a 50% win percentage. Faze does not. So what's the takeaway? Well, I think there's further digging here, and while it's clear Faze is competitive with major qualifying teams, they seem to fall short in series win percentage against some of the other, quote, dominant teams like G2 or NRG of past. And I'll be honest, the data on this was kinda weird, and I'm still not so sure how conclusive it is. While Faze has never been the undisputed best team in North America, it's undeniable that they are, at a bare minimum, consistently competitive at the top. So let's turn our heads to the international stage. Realistically, this is where Faze's top 4 phenomena got its name, and it gets real freaky when you start to lay out the data. Let me show you. When you only look at the 4 LANs in which Faze finished top 4, Faze played 3 North American opponents and 1 European opponent. Not only has every single opponent been the 1 seed from their respective region, Faze lost 1-4 in every series except for the 21-22 World Championship, where they got a single game more, losing 2-4. Just for reference, here's the other side of the bracket and their seed. Basically, these are the teams that Faze would have played had they gone through the opposite side of the bracket. Going back to the fall major, the opposite side of the bracket included European 4 seed Semper and the European 3 seed BDS. Winter had a North American 5 seed in Space Station and the North American 2 seed in G2. Only the World Championship included a 1 seed in Furia. All other majors had significantly weaker seeded opponents on paper. Now, it should be noted that a seed is only a number. We should all acknowledge that a higher seed does not indicate that a team will win. But it's something to consider that at least on paper, FaZe has had a harder top 4 matchup than any other team more consistently. This is probably some of the more compelling data in the story of FaZe's top 4. It doesn't give the direct answer to why, but it definitely maps out the what. What can we point to and say on a general level stops FaZe in its tracks? Well, on paper, they seem to draw the toughest matchups between the 2 semifinals in their penultimate series. The final piece of data that we haven't spoken about is the player and team data. What does the team and individual performances look like when FaZe is against the field, and what do they look like in a top 4 position? Spoiler, it's not good. A fun place to start is how well FaZe performs in their first game of a series, specifically whether they win or lose it. When FaZe is playing in a series below top 4 in either a LAN or regional, FaZe wins game 1 70% of the time. Furthermore, they are 29-2 in series when they win game 1, making that a 93.5% series win rate. And when they lose game 1, they're still sitting at a 46% series win rate. Compare that to when they're sitting in top 4 and the data is clear. FaZe are 1-8 in game 1 while in the top 4 position, an 11% win rate. Not to mention, the 2 times they made it to game 7, they've lost. It shouldn't be a shock that the comparison data would be worse for FaZe when they're in a top 4. I mean, that's the whole point of this video. But the individual stats might shock you on how far player production falls when FaZe loses in top 4. There's been 5 players on FaZe since 2021, and all of them have suffered in top 4 scenarios. Just to cherry pick some of the worst, Alucian's assist went down by 440% when FaZe were top 4. His goal participation down by 99%. AJ's shooting percentage went down by 90%. His goals per game down 138%. Sypical suffered the same fate, a decline of 74% in goals per game. Shooting percentage down by 63%. Even FaZe's newest recruit, Mist, had similar declines, though his sample size is quite small. I could go on and on. But what about First Killer? The lifeblood of this team, the golden boy of his generation. Surely, he could perform even when his teams can't, right? Well, actually, yes, kind of. Despite his assists going down by 147%, his shooting percentage only drops less than 0.5% overall. His goal participation actually goes up by almost 5% in these situations. Obviously, most of his stats are still falling off, but definitely not in the same way as his teammates. Minus 10% in goals per game, minus 10% in saves per game, minus 16% in score per game. You get the point. When you boil it all down, on an individual level, every player, including First Killer, drops off, some more than others. Personally, I think watching back all the games with these stats in mind might help give more context, and I'm not sure there's enough here to make an accurate conclusion. This video wasn't really meant to answer every single question, more so to show the data and give people something to chew on. In all likelihood, you could boil down FaZe's losses to something outside the game just as easily as something in the game. No doubt in my mind, FaZe is a top team. The data supports this claim by a landslide. They currently have some of the most exciting players to watch at RLCS, and I don't see them slowing down their consistent top 4s. I do know one thing. The day FaZe's top 4 curse is broken is one to celebrate. It will be a day where FaZe can claim triumph, and a day they will no longer be referred to as Fourth Clan.
Take 2, if we tango, everybody fake 2, a fake halo, tell me how to break through, with my aim low, I might get a beach view, if I'm shallow, you know that